Hello and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and tonight I bring to you part 2 of my discussion with Nick Kizirnis of the punk band The Obvious, as well as a slew of different varying bands transcending genre of all type. Right now, we're trying to get into a little bit of his new work, his new single, Way to Me. That just dropped this past week. It's available on lathe cut clear vinyl. This episode is like a flip side to part 1, wherein we get to a lot of darker places in the human psyche. Not as dark as I normally get on this show, because Nick is just let's face it, he's a pretty positive guy, upbeat, happy. But we get into the depths a little bit. We get into the reeds, and it's enlightening. It's a lot of fun. He's a very, very intelligent human being with a whole lot to say. So without further ado, I give to you part 2 of my interview with Nick Kizirnis on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
So is the music good? Do they enjoy being involved in it? Is it a nice experience when they do it? And then I really try to work really hard to promote it, and get that music out there in different ways. And I mean, we see what happens. We're seeing right now, we've been working on this single that's coming out tomorrow, and it's like we've been working on it, and we'll see. And that's all you can do. But the other thing too is, I'm not, losing the rent. If I, like when I was on, out touring with Cage, I'm like, am I gonna be able to pay the rent? So it's like, because you're not in the band in the van all the time. So, I do realize I'm very fortunate in that way, that it's like I'm doing this very seriously, but also doing it in a way that fits in for Kathy and I and our kids and our,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's great, and a lot of that is, I know a lot of people who work, in, like, we're just talking about the people in Ohio who have gone out all these places, and like David Poe and Matt Espy playing in Dead Rider, and Josh Hogan Asleep at the Wheel, and John Schmerzel playing in Care. But then I talk to all those people and find out, and it's interesting how their lives are arranged and the different things they do and all that. It's a really interesting, like, the music industry is actually a really interesting industry, but it's not nearly as straightforward because of the way it is, right? The way it works, I find it fascinating how people, like, how they put the different things together, and how it works. And so I'm like, okay, I guess this is how I do it.
Because right now there's no metric, because let's say you were tied to a larger label, you end up owing them money. Whereas, like,
priority.
Whereas if you're doing it yourself, which is what we'd learned in the 80s, was how to do this sort of thing.
Yes.
You're on the right track, because maybe if you fail, it's on you, but if you succeed, it's all you.
It's all you. Yeah. And then maybe the support or the money comes after you've already got enough. Yeah. I mean, I work with, or have worked with bands who've always had that mentality, and then all my friends who are in bands have that same DIY mentality. Lung is a great example of that. They or booking their own tours, or getting on other tours, and really in control of everything they're doing. And I keep meeting bands and artists that are like that, and not only that, but they're all doing it in different ways. So I met Sam Ray, who played cello for Brandi Carlile. And so she went on her own, and she had a whole way that she wanted to travel, like where she wanted to go, how she wanted to do it, what the shows were going to be like all of this sort of stuff. Had the musicians she wanted to care, and thinking, it's a very entrepreneurial way of thinking. It's also very DIY, and it also was about lifestyle. And I thought that's really fascinating, because I think a lot of us kind of maybe grew up thinking, of course, the industry is not like it was, right? But kind of thinking it's a certain way, but it is like exactly what you said. It's like you do it do as much as you can. And what I always say is then don't delegate until you need someone to take care of something for you,
Right.
because then you're still at in the driver's seat. And so most of the groups, and the people we've been talking about today, in the different ways that they do it, are, even if some of them are working with labels, they tend to be those types of arrangements. And it's actually, sometimes it can seem like a real struggle, but in some ways it's really interesting how things are set up now, because it is possible for like you and I to decide we're going to like record a song and put it out, and we've got all the distribution we could ever handle. Any more distribution, we couldn't handle it. You know what I mean? It's like we've got all the resources, we got all the tools to do it and to measure it and create our own metrics, as you were saying, like to decide what that is. And so for me, like, I have a family, I have a job, I'm recording, and I sort of have a whole approach to, these are the things, and they change, right, depending of how I'll promote, how I'll make the music, and then how I'll promote the music, and how I'll know if it's working, and what I'll do with it if it is, and what I'll do with it if it doesn't, but it's all based on the creation of the songs. And I feel like it's sort of like a reward in a way for working on it all these years, that now the tools are all there, And so, I mean, it's like, you used to have to call Jim every Thursday between 3 and 5 if you wanted a show in Jersey City, and it's like, and he didn't always pick up, and now it's just like, you just shoot him a DM or whatever, I'm not saying things are easier in that way, because there's all sorts of other things that come in, but it is kind of exciting that bands who want to control their own destiny, who just want to do their thing, can just do it. And it's like, you can form a band today and your record's out on Bandcamp tomorrow, and it's on Spotify in 3 weeks. Not even. It's on every streaming platform in 3 weeks. And that is a signal to noise thing. And that is the downer, right?
Yeah.
But it also, I think that if we're not trying to shoot for the moon the whole time. And this one thing I think I've learned over the years is, like, all those groups and all those things, I have people who have kind of stuck with me and supported me, and I just keep meeting new and amazing people, and I keep getting to play with new and amazing people, and so in that sense, it's like, it's always been like that. But I feel really lucky to have been able to keep doing this and have some people that will listen. And I'm sure, wouldn't it be great if we had 1 million people, right? But it's like, just having some people who appreciate it is great. Because that's kind of, and that's not even like an ego thing. It's more like a validation thing, right? Because it's like, it's like, in the end, if you're not doing it because it's an outlet and you need to, then why are you doing it, right? Maybe if you're a super good player and you just get gigs, but it's like, but it is nice to put it out there and get like, like some validation that it's connecting. I think that, and that's been great.
That's gonna come though, because you've been whittling away at it. You've been
whittling away. It's true. Yes.
and we all, that's what we all do.
Yep. Yeah.
But I've noted, I've just realized that I only have legitimately one format to my entire podcast, and it's one question, and I didn't ask it because we hit the ground running in a very phenomenal way, so we didn't need a conversation starter. But now that we're toward kind of like the latter half of the interview, I always ask the same question. What is it that terrifies you on an existential level?
Geez. Wow, I was not prepared. How was I not prepared for that one? Ask it. I didn't even. Well, okay. We might have to break that down a little bit. I think the thing that's like scares me on an existential level is, I think I have a big fear about like health and harm to like my family and loved ones. That is like, can be very scary at times, right? And I think that is, kind of going through like losing my parents and losing like my best friend, years ago, and seeing my kids go through scary stuff, and friends go through scary stuff. I think like, I think, because a lot of people ask me about different fears and things I'm scared of, and I'm like, well, I don't feel like I'm scared of things. Like, eventually you're like, you overcome things because you go through them. But that's the sort of thing that gets me at a point of like, the like want to like stock up the cans in the bomb shelter kind of, is that sort of fear that you can't like, and this is where it goes existential, is that like, you like, no matter what you do, you won't ever be able to like completely take care of someone. Like my daughter's up in Chicago and, you know, like on her own, and she's, you know, big city gal, and but it's like, but that is a sort of like a, you know, I just know at times when, you know, when she's been struggling, it's just like a, you know, like, oh, it's, you know, I'm almost like, it gets to the point where like you feel like you're sort of like, what's the world mean if you can't do something to remedy this, to keep it from, not just fix it, but keep it from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
Is that a weird answer?
No.
But I think that fear that you have, well, fear plus responsibility to like a small child that is sick, right? Or something like when my son broke his arm, he broke his arm, and I had to take him to the hospital, and they had to put him under, but they don't put you under all the way. They put you like, you know, in twilight.
Yeah.
Second, he just goes completely blank, and I thought the world ended.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
That to me is like, and then that actually applies to my friends and my family. You know, and having gone through that with some family members now too, it's just like, it's a very brutal, and you just said like you're sort of perpetually in fatherhood mode. I'm like, I almost feel like it's kind of that, it's that sort of protective thing, but at the same time, you know, ultimately you can't do anything about it. So you can only do what you can do, right? So you know, it's a work in progress to understand your responsibilities, your accountabilities, and your borders, right? Your boundaries, and like what you can
and
do.
your abilities.
Right. And well, and those are the things I think get challenged the most, because you're continually up against, oh, maybe I can't do this, or I don't know how to do this, or I don't do this very well. And I would say all the time, you know. On the other hand, like my son's 16 and a half now, and I'm really enjoying this sort of transition into these like adult, you know, grown up kind of family relationships is really exciting as well. So I mean, but I don't think I'll ever lose that, you know. And so and I do, you know, like I've had friends in situations like that too, where I've felt those same types of things, you know, where, I mean, you know, you have empathy, right? And you're protective and you're caring and all those things. But like sometimes that does get to me. Sometimes I do feel, you know, the pandemic certainly rattled my cage with that a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, a friend of ours passed away from complications after COVID a couple weeks ago. And it was like, it's like that sort of thing that just makes you think, you know, it's once you feel powerless, now we're to the existential, right? So it's like, it's like, what can I do? You know? And it's like, well, that's probably not the right question. You know, it's just like, you know, you just present, and then you find out, right? As if you're present, then you're going to, if you're there and you stay there, then, you know, and you practice compassion, then okay, then that's it. But it's still really scary. So,
it's terrifying. And
thanks,
you know,
thanks for the tough question, Peter.
I ask everybody this question, and normally it's right at the beginning. I get it out of the way.
Right at the beginning. Oh my god.
Yes, I'm a fucking punisher. But, you know, we hit it off really quickly and easily. So I kind of just, it was a foregone conclusion that I would come to that later.
Get to it eventually.
Yeah, we'd get there.
No, that's great. That's a great one. So
now that I've taken all the wind out of your sails, right?
No. It's just interesting though, because it's like, you know, it's like then you start figuring out the, you know, like where your motivations are, and it puts things into perspective, you know. I mean, it's like, as important as music is, you know, it's like, I mean, it's like everything's, so as I mentioned, I've been in the same line of business for a long time in terms of software design, and I've been really fortunate to get to a point where things have been like pretty good for a while, right? And that's allowed me to be less of a person who's working constantly trying to, you know, like get there, to being able to like, cool, I feel like I've hit my stride. I can't believe I'm saying this. Knock on wood. Right? So, but that's allowed, you know, like the family to be in better balance, right? Because family had to put up with me traveling or working crazy hours or whatever, you know. Music was like turned off for a little while because it wasn't, you know, and it's easy to go down the rabbit hole in music, right? So it's nice. Like I feel like I've got a nice balance of those things, you know, and it's at a time when, you know, like when the kids were younger, got to do all those really fun kid things. Then they go through the teen years of sort of establishing themselves,
Yeah.
and now we're having and then you go, you're like, and now as they're growing up, we're having these conversations as more of like grown-ups or about to be grown-ups. Love it. It's great. I really love it. And I really appreciate the fact that I've been able to get back to playing music as well, and I think my kids kind of think it's pretty cool. It's not exactly their style, it's got a little bit of twang to it, so that's not really their thing, but they kind of like that I do it, and then I do, that, I could be really bad at it. It's like, well, gosh, I guess I shouldn't say that, but it's like they seem to think I'm pretty good at it. So.
Right. But the thing is like, I remember being young, like young, and thinking my father was the coolest human being on earth because he was a drummer and he played gigs with Muddy Waters after he got out of Vietnam. Like, I just thought,
God,
my dad's the fucking coolest fucking guy on earth. He took me to see the Clash when I was a kid. Like,
yeah, with the Who.
Yeah, with
82 tour, 81, 82.
Shea Stadium.
God.
Shea Stadium, yeah. And
dude.
later on, looking at him as like, this drunk asshole, but I'm not really like understanding that this guy was in Vietnam. I have pictures of him with human ears around his neck. Like he was in combat. Wow. He was in hell. This guy went through shit. And kind of like learning about the extremities of who your parents could be and who they are, and the dichotomy of that in relation to being your parents. And it's easier when it's mom, because mom is still like, my mom went, but my mom was also the nurturer. So I don't have that kind of push and pull. But with dad, he was the epitome of psychosis and violence, yet the epitome of artistry and poetry and the beauty of human existence. My main goal is to not be that in the eyes of my my children, but I'm probably fucking gonna be, and I can't stand it.
We just ended up asking you the question. So
yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. That is interesting, because it's like, my parents were like, they were amazing people, but my dad had struggles, my mom had struggles, and those were things that was very, concerned about repeating, perpetuating, being different. I think that is probably enough.
Yeah,
right there, because it's like I think self-awareness is like, we don't, I would like to think I'm self-aware. Every once in a while I'm like, oops.
Sure, of course.
But I think that if it's like, if we're willing to go there and then do the work from there, then we're going to be okay. We're not going to be perfect. Are we going to do some things they did? Probably. But it's like, but the thing, what we're going to do is we're going to learn from them. And that was the point, right? To be self-aware and to learn from them so that we make better decisions about what we do. Not that they made any bad decisions, right? But it's just to be able to progress. And I think that's probably all that they would have wanted, So I think my folks were really good about kind of laying things out. And then I played in bars starting at 15.
Yeah,
right. And so, and my parents were super strict before that. And then they let me do this.
Yep.
So, but before that, they really laid out things about sort of like code of conduct, I guess, in a way, like how you treat people, how you behave, how you act, like the way, and sort of set a pretty good foundation. So even, in their struggles or in their issues that they faced, it's like they kind of set that out. I'm not saying perfect at all. You still have to learn how to like walk, right? You get, so you can hear that stuff, but it's like, I did appreciate that they did that, so that kind of puts some perspective for me, that like when my dad was struggling with all of his health and all those things, is like maybe wasn't taking care of him anyway with himself, but it's like what I kind of look at those positive aspects, and I think, okay, well, then there's some of the downsides of the issues. How do I want to make sure I take care of myself, for myself and my family, to do better or whatever. I'm trying not to say that in a judgmental way, just
Right.
so like if I can do what I think what needs to be done for me, right, to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And my health at 53, I said it, is much, much better than my parents' health.
Yeah. Well, think about their generation, our parents' generation, born in the 40s. It was a different thing, I mean,
Yeah.
you and I are legitimately only like what 5 years apart,
Yeah.
and our parents came from the baby boom and slightly before, and there was the great World War II of it all with our grandparents, and everybody, like in my family, all the men died in their late 30s, early 40s. Even my father, who passed away from Agent Orange,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
he was like in his 60s, and he lived so much longer than his father and his grandfather.
Yeah.
He almost made it to 70, which is like that puts me like, okay, I might make it to 80.
No, but true. Like, I mean, my parents died early 70s, and a lot of that was health related.
Yeah.
My grandparents were from Latvia and came over after World War II, and they each made it to 90.
Yeah.
And so did my my grandparents, but also my great grandmothers made it that old too. And so I think, okay, well, the family is pretty hardy, but they had like a very Latvian way of living, right? Very meat and very potatoes and potatoes. But it was the time period our parents grew up in, it's like as Americans, like health was not the same thing as what we're experiencing now. So like we potentially are, and our kids are even longer, like almost to the point of like
hundreds.
Yeah. Like that may be a thing for our kids, whereas like we're thinking 80, 90, and with some certain conditions in place.
Well, because we're Slavic people, you and I both. I mean, you're Latvia, Poland. I mean, there's that whole, like, we're cholesterol fiends, like the butters and
we're the Zocor fiends.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I am. So I mean, my whole family's got the high cholesterol. So, but brought that over. So it's really, I don't know. I just think that's it. I mean, it's like sometimes what we see our parents do can scare us, and we see that in our kids because we want our kids to be right. It's like, but I think it works out okay. I think it's just a matter of what our mindset is of how we approach it. It says it all, right?
Yeah. And my son, I have my 3-year-old son. He's basically jazz royalty because my wife's great uncle played in Duke Ellington's band, Lawrence Lucy. He's a legend.
Oh
he's a legend. He was 104 years old when he died.
That's amazing. And that's so amazing. Oh my God.
He was in the heroin years of jazz.
Yeah.
And he just passed it over. He's like, nah, I'll just he was the best man in one of Dizzy Gillespie's weddings. Like, this guy was heavy.
That's so cool.
My son has all this music on both sides, and I'm really hoping that, my son kind of takes after mom's side of the family.
Oh yeah, I see what
you know what I mean? Because we are just like, the Tansky side is a collision course with a dark destiny. But
that creative music side though, that's like so amazing. I mean, hopefully whatever he decides to do, he'll get to.
He's already
legacy, like
he's already musically inclined.
He's
surrounded by it. I've synthesizers, drums, guitars all around this guy.
Yeah.
And he's taking to it. And
that's awesome. That's awesome.
He loves the Misfits and the Ramones. Like at 3, he already has like 1 foot in it already.
Cool.
And it's
cool.
It's beautiful to see, just like your kids, like
it's fun to see them like take the stuff and decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
And then my son was playing drums for a couple of years, and he was like solid. Like at 11, he was a solid drummer, and he's kind of entertaining getting back into it. And if he does, my daughter played like 5 different instruments, very competently, but she wasn't that interested in it. But she has like an in-depth music appreciation, like she has good taste in music, right? Just like, Kathy, my wife, does. And so it's just cool to see that. It's like, if they want to play music, if they want to be musicians, cool. If they don't, cool. It's like, whatever. Like for me, it's the thing. That's what makes me tick, and so I'm glad that they gave it a try to see if they enjoyed it. And I love the fact that, like, he can pick up a ukulele. I mean, it's like they've got some musical inclination here too. And to me, like, and this is how I teach the students I teach, is just to, like, even if you kind of have to go back off and play basketball or do whatever, if you have that, you always have it. You can always sit there and play and enjoy it. I do teach every once in a while. I teach a couple adults. And I guess in some ways I'm just trying to teach the appreciation and the joy of it, because it's like it hasn't been a day since I was 12 or 13 that I haven't played the guitar.
Too.
And there's still so much, like, I've been taking lessons from this guy in England over Skype, and it's just like my mind is getting blown. I'm like, there's so much to learn, but I love it. But I'm never going to learn all of it. I'm just going to enjoy the process. I think just kind of like Miley Cyrus, I think, really enjoying the climb or whatever.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, though,
I got you there for a second. You were like,
you see someone like Miley Cyrus, though, and she went from being this teen idol, Hannah Montana thing to she shows up in music in these like jam sessions with Laura Jane Grace from Against Me.
Yeah.
Like she has a deep appreciation for music in all of its forms. So I'm not going to shit on that woman because she loves what she does.
I do like it when people
she hangs out with Wayne Coyne, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I do like it when people use their powers for good.
Yeah,
that's a and I've always had my role models have always been people who've done that. I mean, it's like that example. I love that example of like Sonic Youth with the Melvins and with the with Nirvana, and then my friend Jim joined the Breeders. Nirvana took them on the Breeders on tour with them, and Jim went from playing in Dayton, Ohio, to playing all over the world with Nirvana. And so it was like, and
Bruce Springsteen took Social Distortion on tour a couple times. Like, come on, man.
Yep, love stuff like that. And I've been really lucky, like, that people have done that for me, have given me chances to like get a leg up and to learn. Like working with Mark, just with everybody I've been working with, have been they're such great people and so talented and have so much insight, and I've learned so much. And it's like those are just great opportunities, and. I mean, I think that's kind of how I just want to keep making records now is in these groups of different people to see what we can do. And it's interesting because I've had other people kind of approach me now, but hey, would you be interested in doing something? And, where it's this sort of thing of like, yeah, it's like the time and space is right to do something. Let's try to do something. And some things just sort of sit there and maybe they happen, maybe they don't, whatever. And you can't have a huge list of stuff you never get to it or whatever. But it's like things that just, we'll see what feels good and go from there. But it's kind of nice just to know that there's opportunities out there, right? And to know also, having done this now, like I've been working on these records for past few years, is to sort of have that be a way of working that is really exciting and really pushes me to keep going and because I kind of want to, I'm like, oh, now here's this, and it's like, and there's a continuity that goes back from being first playing at Canal Street Tavern in Dayton, Ohio, and meeting Mark Patterson, when I was 15 or whatever, and all the way to now. And I continue to meet new and wonderful people and make great friends.
You have great people in your orbit. That's the most inspiring thing to me, to have the ability to reach out to these people who are luminaries in their specific fields, who are willing to work with you and don't have any misgivings about throwing their hats into the ring with you because they know it's going to be something worthwhile. That speaks volumes to what your capability is.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very thank you very much.
Well, I knew the obvious. You know what I mean? Like, I know your music since I'm a young guy. Like, I was a pretty young fella.
getting out of this one. He knows the obvious. I've been really fortunate to, like to work with just great people ever since I started, and get help from so many wonderful people, and still be able to work with people that are, doing cool stuff, and maybe some of them are off doing big stuff, maybe some of them aren't, but it's like, but just finding ways to work with people that are just, like kind of keep everything going, and we just have good experiences together, and and like for me, like I like to do this, and I like to make things happen, so I'm interested in making records and playing shows, right, and promoting them, and things like that. So it's nice to be able to do that, and then work with people who maybe that works for them, maybe that makes it easier for them, but the best thing really about it is the friends I've made out of it, where I would say, like with a lot of, like almost everybody, we've even referred to or brought in, it's just like, yeah, sure, music, great, whatever. But like the friendships I've developed have been just amazing, and that I think like has contributed to, me growing as a person way beyond any of the guitar and like the band, guitar, bass, and drums and band stuff. It's like I'm just so grateful for that, to like have
that's the punk rock of it all.
Yeah, it's just like the community of it has been like, I feel really lucky for that.
That's
like if we never put out any of that music, like it's so funny because we did a release show, one off show. We did the album with almost everybody from the album, and we did a rehearsal, and I was like, we don't even really need to do the show.
Yeah,
because it just manifested itself right here, right? So it's like, so this was like, I'm like, second rehearsal, I'm like floating on a cloud,
Yeah,
and it was like, this is great. I'm so happy we could have done this, and of course, and then the show ended up being like a just amazing experience. But it was, but that was the thing of just having the friendship and community and doing those things. And then we also happen to make music as well,
right?
And that's also I think like what's so fun about going and out of town and playing and growing your community by playing with these other bands that are like, hey friend, hey, like-minded person. And so I feel very lucky to be able to do that over the years, as well as to meet people in different places. And now all my friends who travel and tour, I see that is at the top of the list, is like that sort of camaraderie, that friendship, and that cooperation and stuff with people. And it makes me really happy to see that not everywhere, I'm sure, but like most places, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, is like you go to places and there's like good places with good bands and really good people.
Yeah.
And then you have this sort of like richer life because of it. So,
and that's why when Tim reached out to me with the idea of you coming on my show, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I know this guy. Hold on. I know his music. Like I don't, and Tim can definitely verify this. I don't have musicians or artists on the show that I don't have an affinity for, because like it may seem sycophantic to a degree, and maybe that's true, but I don't really care. I don't have it in me to sit and have a conversation with someone who I don't appreciate on a musical level, because what would be the basis of the conversation? Like, you make this, like, hey, have this white power musician on your show. Well, guess what? I'm going to tell him to go fuck himself in about 27 different ways.
Yeah.
But like, someone who creates art that I have an affinity for, of course, I'm going to have an interest in.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Your inclusion in this is predicated on a very rich history of music that I have enjoyed since the early 90s.
Oh, well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate you having me and the chance to talk with you. So thank you.
I can't wait to get my hands on this. You're doing a lathe cut.
Yeah.
For this, right?
Yeah. You need to shoot me your address. I'll hook you up.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
Yep. Oh, no worries. Robin Raymond cut the record. She runs Red Spade Records it's in Calgary now. It was in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the record. So she printed it. Rachel Botting, who did the CD art. This is actually the inside panel of the CD. So consistency.
Yeah.
And so Robin is the only woman in Canada who hand cuts records. So she's
oh wow.
Yeah, and this is not fancy compared to some of the stuff she does. She does check her out. Red Spade Records is amazing, but the sound is great. She's such an amazing engineer. She's got such a great ear, and she did a fantastic job. She was so awesome to work with. I can't wait to work on another project with her again. So
have you ever seen the process of that, the lathe cut process?
A little bit, because over at Joyful Noise in Indianapolis, Moose over there cuts their lathe records, and he did a project for me last year that was this where did I put it? I don't know where I put it. It was an art project, really. I'm gonna find it for you. And no, I'm not. So anyway, it was, I painted these two square lathes, and then he cut on the other side. And so I got to see a little bit of that process as well. And that was really cool. But it was still kind of like, I didn't quite know exactly what I was looking at the time. And when she's got a bunch of photos of her actually doing the work. It's sort of like you imagine the factory making the record, but it's like she's in there with her hand and her headphone, and and it's like, oh my God. Anyway, if you, I'm getting ready to send these out, and I will be more than happy to send you one if you just shoot me your address later. So I will,
because I would love to get my hands on one.
And it's got the new. Oh, I'm sorry. What's that?
The idea that, and there are people local to me that also do the lathe cut vinyl thing, but it's so labor intensive. It's not like mass producing where they extrude and it gets poured into a mold. These are cut off and etched in real time.
And it's like Moose did such a great job on it, and then Robin did such an amazing job on it. I just loved working with both of them, and Robin is part of the Women in Vinyl. It's a nonprofit here in the US. So they basically provide resources for women who are, DJs, record stores, mastering engineers, like all, but like vinyl related work. So that's a really neat organization. They have a really cool podcast. And so getting to work with both of them, and on these projects, was a really cool way to make a record, just a small run of records for some people who would like a record. So this one got the original version of the song "Way to Me" from the record, and then it's got the new version, which is basically the recording, but it's been manipulated. And why? Because why not?
Because why the hell not? Absolutely.
Because there was just kind of a thing of a couple songs on the record where we were like, we did some weird things and we didn't end up putting them on there. We're like, well, what if we go back and play with it just for fun? What would happen? And then it turned out to be kind of fun. So it gives us another chance at bat, And over the pandemic, I've been learning a lot more about different ways to promote. Tim Andro at Sweet Cheetah has been really great to me, just kind of giving me guidance and things to think about, to work on. And I've been following his advice, and it's been really great for me as an individual trying to get music. So we're actually going to do another song from the record like this with another person who does more electronica beats and things like that, where he's kind of doing a treatment of one of the slow songs. And so, I mean, it's just sort of part of the path, right, to do this. And Robin and I've talked about doing another lathe project, and just see what we can come up with. I kind of just it's not a totally clear path, but it's just based on like song creation and then recording and apparently manipulation, right? So, let's then mess with the song, but it's sort of like trying to be, I will admit to being very narrow-minded in the past. Even though I would do a lot of different things, I would do a lot of them the same way. Play the shows in the same way, have the bands in the same way, make the albums in the same way, And so I feel like kind of free of that. And now I'm kind of enjoying, it's almost like, hey, I've learned how to do all this stuff. Now I can enjoy doing it in different ways and have fun, right?
Yeah.
And appreciate all of that stuff. But as well, I feel pretty flexible to do that, and we'll see what happens next. This is my first single ever, so this whole thing was designed for me to learn how to put a single out and how to get used to being also introduce myself as a hey, I'm now a singer songwriter. I'm not in an instrumental band it's like I'm doing the and kind of see where it goes. So it's been it's cool. I'm really enjoying it, and
it's a great full circle kind of story, because like you went around the bend to come back to kind of like the most simplistic square one of it all, where I'm writing these songs, I'm executing them, and I'm recording them, and here it comes.
Yeah, simple. It got so
beautiful.
complicated over the years, but now it's really simple, and it's for the enjoyment of it, right? So it's like very much a beginner's mind approach, right? It's just like, yeah, we're back at the beginning, and yeah, I'm just really grateful to be able to do that, and for people to be able to listen to it, and for the chance to talk about it, because I mean, it's just funny. In this conversation is just it's reminded me a lot of stuff that maybe I take for granted sometimes, is all of that music, all of this like wonderful music that it's like, and I'll kind of revise what I said earlier, is it because I was like, well, is there any more music? Like, I mean, yeah,
there always
will be. There always will be, and we know it because we can look at history. It's not going to stop. Dude,
I remember hearing Anthrax State of Euphoria and saying to a friend of mine, I don't care if it's a hardcore band or a crossover band or a thrash metal band, nothing will ever be as heavy as this record. And then fucking Death came out. Leprosy the same year.
Yeah. Like, I remember that. Yeah.
I take that back. This is the heaviest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah. And then Morbid Angel happened. And then Deicide, and like things just like, it's everything will always be topped. It's not about topping this or that. It's about who's doing it the best.
That's so funny, because I was like right there with you with Anthrax. I ended up seeing Anthrax, and then hearing Death, but then I never saw any of those other bands. Like because I wasn't like for me, like Metallica, Ride the Lightning was like sort of like like that was an exception for me. I was like, I was hearing all the metal stuff at the record store, but I wasn't into really any of it, and that was of course an exception because it was thrashy. I'm like, well, it's not GBH, but it's but it is pretty thrashy.
But it is like Discharge kind of.
It's really and it's really fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it, and
Anthrax were the best at it, in my opinion, too. But
we saw them at in Cincinnati, and they were so much fun. They were such a great show. It was so ridiculously loud, So not as loud as Skinny Puppy, though.
Well, Skinny Puppy. Well, we're talking about Too Dark Park, like the most evil record of all time.
I saw them on the Vivisect tour, and then I saw them on Too Dark Park, and also the Rabies tour. And the Too Dark Park, Rabies was almost unlistenable live.
Yeah,
it was almost in an awesome way. It was just so painful. So because it was so loud, and then the next loudest show I ever saw, same place too, was Sonic Youth. Which was like where I'm like, oh, my head, my head's gonna explode in a good way, of course.
Yeah.
I want to be that loud.
But there was that idea of extremity in the late 80s, early 90s, where like you would see Ogre from Skinny Puppy, like with saran wrap over animal entrails, and he's ripping them out, and like mental shock.
Loved it. Oh yeah,
loved
it. It was so great. Yeah, got right in the front row watching him do that stuff. So and that and really that whole, the reason I actually really like them is it was all of that like right now, like I'll chill out to like Brian and Roger Eno with Daniel Lanois right on Apollo.
Oh yes,
but that's sort of like that Skinny Puppy's like textured, layered, soundtrack-ish type of stuff, like that stuff always I was just like, oh, I could just like, I mean, I just love it.
And you take Lanois and those guys, and you apply them to U2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, see, and Unforgettable Fire
gorgeous.
is
gorgeous.
Still my favorite U2 album. Just again, it's just that textural. Of course, it's not as like, it's not what Skinny Puppy was doing, but it's just that like sort of like mindset approach to creating this whole like sonic landscape or whatever. Yeah, it was just, I remember hearing that in high school and being like, what? Wow, how did we go from Daniel Lanois to Skinny Puppy when we started with Link Ray and
then the thrash metal and crossover, because it all inhabits the same headspace if you are open enough to accept different sounds, different oral experiments, And, you know, music is music is music.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
all
oh, yeah,
reality,
absolutely.
like you could put on Lycia, you could put on Morbid Angel, you could put on, you know, Gorilla Biscuits. To me, it all inhabits a similar space.
I agree. I think it really is about more of like, no matter what it is, it's mostly just about the core of what's expressing it, right? For
Yeah.
whatever reason, whether it's joy or sadness or whatever, is just that there's like something real that's happening, and then it just comes out how it comes out. And maybe that's why it's come out so many different ways for me, because I've just needed to cover the ground, whereas other people I know have been laser focused, and it's been wonderful the whole time. Like, you know, it's like, you know, what, 40 some years of Richard Thompson, just like, you know, constantly the same, like,
yeah, Martin
awesome.
Martin Gore is the same.
Martin just like over and over and over again. It's like, and it's just like nailed it.
Yep.
Whereas other people may, you know, like me, I just kind of maybe explore more, but hopefully find the same thing, you know. And then, you know, like, and I'll kind of throw another example of that, of people like, I don't know if you know, Danny Gatton was,
of course I know Danny Gatton.
I should have known you did. I saw him play right before he died, and it was like the joy in his playing was like unbelievable. I saw Les Paul a couple times in New York before he died. Same, the joy. A friend of mine, his name's Joe Tritchler. He's a phenomenal rockabilly player. Played with me in the K-Tones. Has his own records. Has toured around with people like Deke Dickerson, and goes to the festivals in Vegas and like plays with all the guys there. He is another one of those players that's just like complete joy in his playing. It's just like, you just can't, you know. And Gatton was like that too, where you couldn't, no matter what you thought of the style of music or the styles he was all blending, he just made it seem like that was the most perfect place in the world, right? And I think that's an aspect that can come out in like sorrow too, right? Or like, you know, like or in other emotions, but it's sort of just that real delivery from the heart, which is so weird about Danny Gatton, because he was so troubled, right? So that's kind of
troubled, but he was a blues like god in all reality.
Sort of like, okay, descended from, in there, inside.
He was in there with Stevie Ray Vaughan and like all of these people that kind of.
He's another person you'd watch and you'd be like, you're watching pure joy right there. I don't know. I mean, I think that's another reason why there'll always be music.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, there'll always be amazing, beautiful music that will still inspire us and make us want to write songs and be in bands and share music with our kids, or be like, oh, have you heard this? You know, and then maybe we get to contribute a little piece of that. No, not saying we're going to make something that's that moving, but anytime someone tells you, when you do something, you know, when you spend all the time working on something, and then someone comes up and they're like, yeah, that song, I really enjoyed it, or it meant something to me, then you're like, oh my gosh,
that's
what greater, like what
everything.
greater thrill is that, you know? So
if I were to break all of that down for you and ask you, what was the first experience for you that kind of imbued that in you, your first musical experience, what was your first moment where you knew, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. But honestly, there were these early moments in my life where I was like, what? And my introduction to punk rock was in a 2-month rush of John DeBuck's older brother, like, you know, buying all these records, listening to 97X, and then basically like throwing them over backwards, and we were playing all of them. We were throwing all these records on, you know, maybe we've been listening to the Beatles and all of that. And it was putting on the Clash's first record.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, it had been Ramones' first record, Buzzcocks, Singles Going Steady, Stiff Little Fingers, and Flammable Material. And it was like, this is cool. And then the US version of the first Clash album.
The better of the two, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. But, and it was like, everything just clicked, you know? And but there was the reason I think I got there was a predecessor. And that's why I'm saying it's not as dramatic. That when we played that, I was just like, this is it. Because at that point, like, I heard me playing, I could play that. I barely. But I was like, I'm good. And then the next song, I'm like, I could do these. And I was learning all that stuff. I'd play that album over and over and over and over and over again, all day, every day. over side one, side two, side one, side two, dinner time, side one, side two, and then of course all the other records too. But but foundation work, I'll just say quickly, was a couple years before that. I the Kids Are All Right documentary.
Yeah.
That was on Night Flight. USA Network's
Night Flight was
and I would see the Laurie Anderson videos and the David Bowie videos and then all the other weird shit, and then
Wendy O. Williams would be on there.
Wendy O. Williams. So, and then I maybe remember I think they played it once, and then I somehow got the VHS of it or something like that. But anyway, I watched that movie so many times, and that was a blueprint for me. That was sort of like my rock and roll idols right there, right? Because at that point you could just plug I listened to the Doors and Zeppelin, and I listened to all of that stuff. I was a huge Pink Floyd fan.
Me too.
But that was, and I didn't even know punk rock at that point, but that to me was everything, but I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until I heard the Clash that then I got an SG. I got a brown SG, and I wanted to get, the overalls, but I didn't do that. But I was up there thinking Ramones, Clash, Who, right? That was So
how interesting that our pinnacle moments are both tied to the same bands.
Right? The only band that mattered, right?
The only band that mattered, the Who and the Clash,
Oh my God.
And Bo Diddley opened, which was
Oh my, yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember the tour.
Fuck my whole face. Wow. But to glean the same thing from the same two bands, really, the Who and the Clash.
Absolutely.
It kind of reminds me that there was something specifically magical about that point in the 80s that maybe a lot of people who were around for it missed. Because Duran Duran, I like Duran Duran, but people were
Adam Ant.
Yeah, Adam and the Ants. People were shitting on all that.
Adam and the Ants, yes. Adam and the Ants.
the whole New Romantics thing.
Yeah.
And,
and MTV, and it was making.
I remember MTV being a fabulous disaster, and it was great to watch because they were a mess.
It was a mess. Oh yeah.
The first week MTV was on was a wreck, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then all the live videos. I even watched Red Barchetta when it would come on.
I love Rush. I love Rush.
I'm not a Rush fan, but I mean, certainly you got to appreciate. I mean, the songs are easy to pick off. I mean, I love all the obvious songs from them. But that lead into them, like those Bowie videos. Like for Boys Keep Swinging and DJ and like all that stuff. Those still, I saw those. I was like, what the fuck? This is amazing.
That was
Ashes, still my favorite Bowie song, and it
was that Berlin era.
Where,
you know what I mean? Iggy and all of them were kind of like bumming around. Lou Reed. They were all.
And then, Laurie Anderson was on there, and then pretty soon, we had one of those repertory cinemas in Dayton, so we would go see Home of the Brave. They showed that there with Adrian Belew, who was down the street. I didn't know that at the time, with the rubber guitar and neck. And then, they had Stop Making Sense, which is just talk about that's a joy. So we just saw that new one, the American whatever it's called, the new David Byrne.
Oh yeah.
Like Lee did. And it's I reminded me of watching Stop Making Sense. It's got to be Byrne that just embodies this, just such this positive, wonderful feeling about music, And I know it is because I saw him speak at South by Southwest, and I read his book, and it was the guy there's just no way to not feel really good about life and music.
Well, he was an antenna.
Yeah, he really is. And the way he does the whole band, and they're just out there and playing, and I'm like, just I don't know. I mean, a friend of mine just went to New York and saw the show and actually said it was amazing. And I'm like, I love the fact that there's amazing music still being made.
The ever presence of the Tubes too. The Tubes were
Tubes,
oh man, they were.
Isn't it funny how no matter how which direction we go, we're going to keep coming up with these, like, like, what the hell are the Tubes?
Yeah.
The Tubes just played in Cincinnati last year.
I don't miss the Tubes. I don't miss the Tubes anytime they play around. I don't miss the Tubes.
I didn't know they were still doing stuff. It's
they are.
That's so bizarre. That's so bizarre. But yeah. No, you're right, though. That early 80s, that was a time of big transition, and it was a time of big waves of music happening, but it's like I didn't listen to most of that stuff because I discovered X, Replacements, Husker Du, like all of that stuff. So I was really absorbed in that, the Buzzcocks, all those, the Specials, the Selector, like all of that stuff, and then of course I was like, oh, Madness, that's cool, but I mean, it was a deep dive into all that because his brother was like 2 years older, and so like we were all in the same, going down the same rabbit hole, and there were tons of bands coming around, and and we were in a band, The Obvious, and we were doing all that stuff, and it was that, I mean, that was great. Now most of people I knew were listening to Van Halen, because they were huge, right? That like everyone was going to see them, and all that stuff. I didn't care less at the time, but you want to talk about somebody who's complete joy when he's playing?
Oh yeah, Eddie.
Yeah, well, whole band actually, but it's like, but him for sure, and so I can hear some of that stuff now and realize why that they were so far beyond what other bands were doing.
I feel bad too because I didn't give a shit less about them back then.
Yeah, and I don't honestly a whole lot now, but I can't really hang with it's just way too macho and sexist.
I'm not a cock rocker. I'm not a cock rocker.
Gross.
It's not my thing. I was always.
But I can hear what they're doing musically in some ways and appreciate like what he was doing,
But whatever they did wasn't as good as the Cult anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
Duffy was better. Billy Duffy was better. Sorry.
Yeah, it's true. Kathy just went and saw them a couple weeks ago. I saw them open for Billy Idol, blow Billy Idol off the stage.
Of course they did. They're a fucking cult.
Yeah. It was electric tour. It was the electric tour, but she just saw them and said they were really good. And it's kind of cool to see a band like we just saw the Psychedelic Furs. They were great.
Well, the Psychedelic Furs are
love that band.
Unimpeachable. Unimpeachable.
And they played all the weird shit. The whole set list was all the weird shit. They played President Gas and like I'm like, and then I'm like, what? They came back for an encore. I'm like, oh, what are they gonna do? India? And they did India. I'm like, and
so they skirted around Pretty in Pink and all that nonsense.
But they did them. They did the hits, of course. But most of the set. Oh no, they did all the ones you'd expect. And and those are killer too.
Sure they are.
And then they did new songs, and the new songs sounded fine. They sounded cool. He sounded great, and again he was so happy. And then X played with them, and X just killed it. I've seen X a few times, but I couldn't even believe how good they were. I mean, they were playing like it was their last show, and I think with their relative, I mean, they've been around for a while, and health scares, it's like I'm so glad I saw them, but I'm even more glad that they're doing it right. And 2 weeks before that tour, he was supposed to play a acoustic show in Dayton, and they had to cancel because they had COVID. And then he's like heels up, hits the road with X for like 30 shows or something like that. I was like, wow. I was like, John Doe, man.
John Doe is
X Doe.
And the fact of the matter is people like John Doe, people like from the Jesus Lizard, he's an actor now.
David Yao.
David Yao. they do the acting thing, then they scale it back and they do the music thing that they came from. They bring the same intensity to both. I mean, John Doe was in Roadhouse, man.
Mm-hmm.
He was in fucking Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Opposite fucking Patrick Swayze.
Right. Yeah.
Come on.
You know who else is like that too? Tom Waits.
Tom Waits is in a class by himself. Let's lay this out. Tom Waits is quite possibly, with the exception of maybe Warren Zevon, the most brilliant lyricist of the entire late 80s, early 90s into the aughts. Yeah. In all reality.
And then
Warren Zevon didn't make a mistake. Neither did Tom Waits.
Tom Waits, yeah. I agree. he was here in Dayton filming a movie, and he went to a restaurant that's like a few blocks from me. Tom Waits was in a restaurant a few blocks from me, and a couple of people I know met him. I did not meet him, but he was a few blocks. Two of the best shows I've ever seen are Tom Waits. I saw him in Akron at a theater, and then later that night at the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Or not Hall of Fame, House of Blues. House of Blues. Two shows. The sets were about 50% different. And the second show started at 2 a.m. Why he did a second show, I have no idea. But they were the two, and one was more, it wasn't theatrical, but one had a little more of a theater mood to it, and the other was much more raw. Duke Robillard was the guitar player, and his son played drums. It was both of the sets had a very, it was before Orphans came out. It was basically, the posters were the Orphans record, but it was essentially the Real Gone tour. And it was, and then he did a full-blown tour, and they made the live album. It was a Glitter and Doom. They made the Glitter and Doom album, and so basically that's what it sounded like. But that was just unbelievable to see him. I'm so glad I got to see him, and he played a very fine selection of everything you'd ever want to hear. So nothing from One from the Heart, but he did play like just about every, like, hey. That was a fine record.
Did he play What's He Building in there?
I think in one of the, I think he did in one of the, he did.
Every time he does that live, it's like an experience.
That's very
Children
cool.
by the Million scream for Alex.
Yep. I know that. Love that. Love that record too. That's a great record.
Oh my God.
The sound on that record. Oh, you know what I love about that record though, the most? The drumming.
Oh, yeah.
Like the drum, like that record made me want to play drums. Well, okay, DJ Bonebreak also made me want to play drums. Like Under the Big Black Sun made me want to play drums too. But I can't do that. But the simple fills that Chris Mars would do on that record, all the space and all that stuff, was
snare
just
hits.
The snare hits were and then every once in a while, boom.
Yeah.
That was
floor tom bass, snare hit, floor tom bass, boom.
Yep. Yes, love it.
Punctuate. That is percussion punctuation.
Yep.
At its most well articulated level.
Yeah, that was
real.
Yep. I'm glad we both have. It's good to talk to somebody who appreciates that, because I think some people miss that, and they miss that record sometimes.
I don't know how.
It was a weird time in the Replacements transition, So
people who shit on "Don't Tell a Soul," for example,
shouldn't do that.
They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Period.
Yeah, I at that age, of course, production was a weird thing for me, but the darkness of that record, like, I really enjoyed. But I enjoyed hearing those mixes that they put out, whatever, a couple years ago, whenever that happened. Like, that was really interesting to hear that stuff too. But it made me just feel just fine about the original stuff too. I didn't feel like, because he's weird. He's so weird about everything. But it's like, I don't know. Even I enjoyed all of that stuff. Like, there's nothing I didn't enjoy.
There's no such thing as a bad Replacements record.
I don't know.
As a matter of fact, the album that everyone else I know thinks is their best record, I love, but I don't think it's their best. Tim.
Yeah, Tim. Love Tim.
I love Tim, but Let It Be is my favorite.
Yeah,
it's the one I heard first.
Let It Be is the one I heard first, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But Tim hit at the right time. And for John and I, that was a record that, like, we heard it at a certain time.
You heard Bastards of Young.
Yeah, exactly. And then we saw them around that time. And, so that became our thing. Whereas Let It Be was already out, so we did we probably heard the first album first. We probably went that album and then Let It Be. And we were like, what? And then Stink was a
hardcore record into
Hootenanny. Right. It's like, and then by the time you hear Stink and Hootenanny, then you just love the whole package, and then Tim came out and we're like, oh, so, and then we were just diehards, I think Tim, because of the songwriting, the depth of the songwriting, because it was all great songs by then, but then he really was coming into his own. Like, he was strong. He was brave enough to kind of share what was really going on and take himself more seriously.
Skyway is on that
Yeah.
record. Like, there's so much to behold, but to me, Let It Be was the first time they wore their hearts right on their sleeves.
Well, that's true. That is true. That's truly them, right? Yeah, that's truly them. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's considered their masterpiece for a reason, right? So
yeah,
and it is. Like, I have to admit, like, it's a better album than Tim. It's just Tim was at the right time, even though, I mean, you had songs like Waitress in the Sky or whatever, but it's just like Bastards of Young, Left of the Dial, Here Comes the Regular, of course, but all of that stuff is just amazing. But boy, he really struggled with, I think he still does, really, with his abilities. It just cracks me. I'm like, well, dude,
you're Paul Westerberg. What the fuck are you worried about?
So yeah. So,
but even like the B-sides from Tim, like like a rolling pin, there's so many like oddball songs that were attached to that record that didn't really make the record, that were still very haunting and very like, had they come out at the time they were supposed to come out, would have been standout songs, but they didn't make the cut until 20 years later.
I know, isn't it weird?
Yeah,
it's weird. But I'll tell you what, you can go back and hear like a song, just pull one out of the middle, like I'll Be You.
Yeah,
brilliant.
You be me and baby I'll be you.
Yeah. And it's just like, what the hell's going on that solo?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course they make the perfect video for it too, right? It's just like, I just saw that video recently. I'm like, that's killer.
The Replacements were what the Stones would have been had they had a conscience in the 90s or in the 80s. In the 80s.
That's good. Yeah, because it's almost impossible to, I mean, who can even talk about the Stones? Yeah, I mean, because it's like all of that stuff. Let It Bleed is still probably my favorite record.
It's genius. But like, I have that box set. It's somewhere behind me, behind that Gravediggers record, actually. It's the Stones in mono. I'm going to grab it right now, actually.
We're going to put it on.
The Rolling Stones in mono, and it is the first, like, 12 records on ABCO. And there's not a stinker in the bunch. And then once you get past Exile, it starts to fall apart.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And
I mean, it's not that there wasn't stuff in there, but then they just sort of became a kind of a tribute band, I mean, I think at one point I was probably like, somewhere around Steel Wheels or whatever. And somewhere by the time Keith Richards made his second solo album, which is so much better than any of
Stones.
That I was just like, like you just have that sort of like dinosaur rock resentment about it. But now it's just like, good for them that they're, like, I don't know, they're happy. They would, I mean, they don't need the money, so they have to be doing it for the happiness, because you can't. Can you even do it for the money at that point? So keep doing it.
We've been pushing. We're almost at the 3-hour mark.
Oh, okay. We should probably
which
is
kind of incredible. Because we started at 8:30 this evening. But if you wanted to leave us with anything at all, what would it be?
Wow. Oh, you mean like just anything at all?
Yeah, like whatever it is that, is kind of the thrust of what your music is now. If people were to take one thing from it, what would that be?
So I think that regardless of the different styles I play or the folks I work with, like, I really enjoy, I hope that I create music that, that creates some positive feelings, even if they're sad songs, that make us kind of think about the, people we love, our family, our friends, and, that even in hard times, we get, we get through them and we learn things. And it's, I think the songs I've written recently, people tell me about them and what they like, and maybe they may say they're about their friends or their families or experiences they've gone through. And that's really nice. So I think, I hope maybe if you hear my songs that maybe they remind you of things, or they make you think about things, and that's a positive thing, I hope.
Yeah.
So yeah. And they're certainly coming from a positive place, and kind of just wanting to kind of share things that I think we all think about, or we all feel in one way or the other. So that's my hope, at least. So,
well, let me tell you, this has been one hell of a conversation. And when your next thing comes to pass, would you come back and sit with us again?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great to talk with you. This has been really great conversation. So
a ton of fun,
awesome.
And we have so much in common. It's actually ridiculous.
I know it is.
So
yeah. Tim didn't tell me. He's like, yeah, you guys are going to be like that. So
yeah, he nailed it.
yeah. Good job, Tim. Yeah. And you need to email me your address so I can hook you up.
I will directly thereafter tonight.
Okay, cool.
All right, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. Great to talk with you. All right.
You as well.
All right. See you later. Okay.
See ya. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. This concludes part 2 of my interview with Nick Kizirnis. I've already said just about everything I can say about Nick's work, his music. It spans decades. It is consistently excellent, well executed, important music. What you're hearing right now is a cut from, The Obvious, his punk band of yore, and you can hear that Replacement's influence that we spoke of, and the sincerity of it. This is a sincere document of youth. And it's beautiful, and it's refreshing to hear all these years later. His music's been a part of my life for a very, very long time, most of my life. It's worth your time. It's worth a listen. Please check him out on Bandcamp. Download, buy a 7-inch. Supporting these independent artists, these important independent artists. And I think that's all I really have to tell you tonight. So next week, when I come back, I will have a surprise for you. We're going into season 2. It's time to change things up. And my voice is not going to be the only voice you hear on these intros and outros. So prepare yourselves, folks, and take good care of each other. Be careful out there. The world's getting scarier by the day. And with that being said, he's been Nick. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. Take care, everybody. This has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast from 3:33 a.m. studios. Please like us, rate, review. We have our PayPal set up if you want to donate. I have Patreon coming for season 2. I don't normally try to hawk myself, but the show is not free for me to make. And, we've been doing it pro bono for a full year. We kind of want to keep this going, but we got to keep the lights on too. So any little bit helps. Bless you. I appreciate it. Good night.